If you're worried about it, don't worry. You can't accidentally gain too much muscle. Except I sort of did. In this video, I'm going to explain two things. One, why everybody can and should strength train, even if your goal is to slim down, not bulk up. And two, the stack I'm currently taking and how I was surprised to find out that I accidentally gained about 5 pounds of muscle without really trying. But first, if you're new here, I'm Dr. Alex Watson. I really appreciate you checking this video out. We are thrilled about the growth of our channel recently and are super grateful for all our new subscribers. If you are not subscribed yet, please, it's a huge favor to us and helps us to reach more people and be able to dedicate more time to these videos because we really enjoy making them. All right, so number one, why everybody can and should strength train. One of the number one things that I hear whenever I'm working with a new patient who's trying to lose weight is, I don't want to get bulky. Trainers hear this all the time, nutritionists hear this all the time. But for anybody who works out regularly, this is kind of a funny thing to hear because there are millions of guys out there trying to put on as much muscle as they can and taking, anabolics as much as they can possibly get their hands on and still aren't putting on the muscle they're looking for. So younger Alex, yesterday when I recorded this, intended that to be hyperbole, but in actuality, looking it up, apparently there are literally millions of guys in the United States, let alone worldwide, who are on anabolic steroids. There was one study from 2006 that estimated about 3 million men in this country are taking anabolic steroids. That was 2006. We now have much better access to it via the internet and all the, TRT clinics coming up here and kind of the less regulated ones, less, above board ones. So that number is likely quite an underestimation. And that doesn't even factor in all the female bodybuilders and fitness competitors who are also taking anabolic agents like Anavar or oxandrolone, those kinds of things. So the idea that you can accidentally get too big is pretty unlikely. In reality, you're going to put on more muscle, and that's going to help you fill out your clothes differently. You're going to gain weight, but you're not going to gain fat. You're not going to gain, a body shape that you're not going for here unless you really, really, really try very, very hard. In that case, you're probably going for it. It's not going to be an accident. So the reason why everybody should is because muscle is an insurance policy against the future. It protects your bones in case of a fall. Stronger muscles create stronger bones because they're pulling on the bone that reinforces and that tells it to get stronger. Muscle is a depot for blood glucose. So if you're having trouble controlling blood sugars, more muscle equals more space to put the stuff. And this way, whenever you're having a blood sugar spike because you had a meal or something, your body's looking around where to put this blood sugar. Hey, it's got all this muscle to dispose of it. Fantastic. Muscle also releases a lot of anti-inflammatory molecules, and these things are what give you this, fountain of youth effect of exercise. It's strongly anti-inflammatory. In sneak peek, we're going to make a video pretty soon about a recent study showing that when you control for the amount of exercise someone is doing, the connection between higher BMI and worse health kind of dissolves a little bit because BMI is a great proxy for activity level. Typically, folks with higher BMIs are less active. But if you have everyone at the same activity level across different BMIs, the health is pretty similar because activity and exercise, that's what's going to make you healthy here. Yes, weight loss is critical for improving health, especially if you have weight-related comorbidities like diabetes and high blood pressure. If you lose weight, you're going to, of course, get those things under better control. That's undeniable. And the best way to lose weight is not exercise. It's actually to control calories. All that being said, if you're going for health, exercise is the way to do it. If you're going for health and longevity out of all this, more muscle is critical for that. I could do this all day. I could talk about this forever. And if you're worried about getting injured, that is a risk that you might be taking. But if you are starting a program with an expert here, someone who is, a physical therapist, a personal trainer, someone who's certified, experienced, people can vouch for them. That's where you want to be if you're kind of totally naive, totally new to this whole thing. But once you understand basic mechanics here, like hip hinging whenever you're doing something with your legs. So you're not hinging at your low back, you're hinging at the hips. So when you're going to a squat, your back is flat and that depth is being gained by the bending of your knees and hips. Once you have the technique down, that's when you'll be able to kind of run with it and don't need as much supervision typically. Kind of similarly, proper shoulder blade mechanics. So the positioning that you're doing when you're doing pull-ups or pull-downs, rows, and any pressing activities, by learning to control your shoulder blades, then you'll be able to take that new skill and run with it in terms of any exercise for the upper body. So those are two of the most important mechanics when you're learning to exercise. And by doing that, you can do a lot of compound movements, the ones that are the best for fastest improvements in health. Those are also the ones that are put on the most muscle the fastest too, because the more muscle you move, the more muscle is going to get built here. But you still can't build muscle by accident because you need a calorie surplus. So if you're not taking in more calories than you're burning, you're not going to build as much muscle. So if your goal is not to put on a ton of muscle and look bulky, that's fine. Still strength train, just keep your calories under control, and you're not going to have a problem with that. You're going to lose the weight and put on the muscle you need here. And then you can use other strategies to support the muscle side of things more by taking in more protein, creatine monohydrate, or any creatine, potentially peptide therapies, optimizing your hormones, things like that. Because if you have low testosterone, bringing that up to normal, that's going to support muscle mass. If you're going through menopause, optimizing your hormones so you just feel better and are more anabolic, that's going to be optimal for building muscle mass and just kind of enjoying your day to day. But the punchline, you're not going to accidentally put on too much muscle unless you do what I did. So that's number 2. What is my stack? Okay. It is no secret that I'm a proponent of peptide therapies for the right contexts. I also work with thousands of guys in optimizing their testosterone levels and can get them in that nice sweet spot typically where you can get maximum benefits while minimizing the side effects. So in my case, I am working with 2 different kind of camps of therapies here. Number 1, I brought my testosterone up using a medication called enclomiphene. My wife and I are family planning, so the enclomiphene has kind of dual purpose here, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't also looking forward to a little bit of a testosterone kick on top of the other fertility benefits. That's number 1. But the problem is enclomiphene gives me some side effects. Some guys get this more than others. Unfortunately, I get them pretty quickly, and that's going to be irritability and kind of just bad sleep and that sort of stuff. Whether I'm just looking for an excuse to use other stuff or what, I add a little bit of HCG into that picture too. HCG is the thing that you're actually testing for when you're doing a pregnancy test. When guys take it, it mimics the hormone luteinizing hormone. When you're mimicking that LH, what you end up doing is actually telling your body to make more testosterone. Now, is that going to have benefits for fertility? It depends. In the production of your swimmers, the testosterone levels in their environment where they're developing is really important. So if you have low testosterone intratesticularly, that's going to make them develop improperly or not the right numbers, those sorts of things. So I bring up testosterone levels in that environment so you can also support fertility and bring up your testosterone levels, which is kind of a win-win. So that's the one side of things. What I'm doing is checking blood work, making sure my testosterone levels don't get too high, making sure that my blood counts don't get too high and thick blood, watching for estrogen side effects. But really, most of the side effects I felt have been anti-estrogen side effects from that enclomiphene. What that may suggest is that I've got lower than average estrogen levels, which is not necessarily a good thing. Because estrogen, as I've said in many different videos here, estrogen is very, very important for muscle health, tendon health, metabolic health, those sorts of things. So that's the other reason why I've been using the lower dose enclomiphene therapy, because I don't want to over block those estrogen receptors, which is how enclomiphene works. One of the other quirks about clomiphene and enclomiphene is that they both actually will decrease the amount of growth hormone that your brain releases during deep sleep. So once again, I'm treating one side effect with another therapy. In this case, it's a peptide therapy. At the same time, I was also training for an 8K. So because of that, I wanted to make sure that I was able to recover as best as properly. And at that point, I was already sitting at 195 pounds. I've run races before at 195. I don't feel smooth. I feel kind of clunky doing it. So what I did was I chose a peptide called testosterone, and using this to help lose body fat while also maintaining muscle mass, I was hoping to lean out, drop down about 190 or so, and run that race a little lighter on my feet. But then I weighed myself recently, I was 200 pounds. I haven't been eating more than usual. I haven't been changing my strength training at all. In fact, if anything, I've actually been lifting a little bit lighter recently because I've been doing more running and less lifting. And yet despite that, somehow put on muscle mass. So it's probably a mix of the testosterone and the testosterone effect there too. So going back to an earlier point I made, you need to be in a caloric surplus to put on muscle mass. That is without using supportive agents like these. You still do, but the delta between the number of calories you need to build that muscle versus just kind of maintain your body, that delta gets a little smaller when you have extra testosterone, extra growth hormone circulating and facilitating better recovery, letting you strength train again sooner, as well as just support muscle anabolism. So building muscle mass instead of breaking it down. So let's tie it all together. How can you put on muscle if you're going for it, or avoid putting on muscle if you're not going for it with a similar training program? And it gets back to calories. You need to find some way of estimating the number of calories that you need per day. What I usually do is just say, track what you're currently eating and then just shave off a little bit from there, 10, 20% just to get started and see what happens. That's a good way of seeing kind of what your baseline is and then how much is really needed to start facilitating weight loss. And that's our folks trying to lose weight. Now, when you add in muscle mass or strength training to build a muscle mass, you're able to increase that delta between the number of calories that you need and the number of calories you're taking in, because strength training, which is physics, you need energy to lift things because you're converting chemical energy in the form of food into potential energy by lifting weight off the ground against gravity. That's thermodynamics. To not bore you, I skipped a step of chemical energy being converted into kinetic energy, into potential energy. But with my luck, somebody out there is going to call me out on it. So I beat you to it. Sorry to everybody else out there. You need to take in those calories. So if you're lifting progressively heavier weights because you're increasing your strength, that is going to require a higher caloric intake, all else held equal, unless you're going to lose weight. That's how it works. If your goal is to get stronger but not put on a ton of muscle, this is where the lower rep ranges typically come in here. So rep ranges in the range of 3 to 5 at very heavy weights, still hitting about a rep or two shy of failure. That way you will put on strength more than you'll put on size. On the flip side, if your goal is to put on size and strength, go anywhere between 8 or 12 up to like 30 reps. As long as you're getting close to failure and eating more calories than you need, you're going to put on muscle mass. If you want to support this better, optimize your recovery, and there may be some peptide therapies or hormonal optimization that can get you there faster. Is it cheating? Yeah, of course. You're doing things that are not biologically available to everybody in nature, and so I would not be going into any sort of a competition saying that I am a natural athlete at the moment. So with the newer research out there's actually an argument to be made that realistically, somebody who's been on anything potently anabolic likely shouldn't be considered a natural athlete anymore after that at all. And the reason why is that your body will recruit certain satellite cells which are supportive cells in muscle tissue that don't seem to regress after you stop those sorts of agents, which means you likely forever have a higher baseline of muscle that you can put on and strength that you can gain, all that kind of stuff, beyond what you would have had you never taken those substances. So even if someone's 10, 20 years off of high dose testosterone or more potent anabolic steroids or growth hormone as well, they likely still have an edge against someone who's been natural their entire lives. It's an ethical, philosophical debate here. However, is it healthy? And this is between you and your doctor, because there's a lot of ways to track these things along the way. Blood tests you should be running, checking your blood pressure. That's a really important one too. We did a video on kidney health before, and the fact that uncontrolled blood pressure is a major risk factor for worsening kidney health. And extra muscle mass strength training does increase blood pressure, all else held equal. And if your testosterone is getting very high, that can also worsen blood pressure as well. So you want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on these things so that you're not inadvertently damaging your cardiovascular system, your kidneys, all that kind of stuff, in the pursuit of better health and actually just shortening your lifespan by accident the whole time. Again, I appreciate you watching. This is a channel put together by a medical practice, so it helps us a lot to be able to dedicate time to these videos if you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.